phone as kind of like a screen recorder teaching. You know, and I'm gonna read this article. This is very fascinating. I was originally for to read a little bit of Exodus, uh, read in my study time something about Moses, but I decided to look at Genesis because I want to read something about Adam. When it comes to, I actually forgot what it was before, but it was a specific reason. But I'm one of those history buffs. Love ancient history. Love piecing it together. Now we're in a time of the information age, so you can biblically piece geography and all that. This is not necessarily an issue that either you're in or out. This is not. This is more so a fun, revelatory type thing. A truth thing coming into the truth. I think is there's been a lot of lies, a lot of deception, especially when it comes to the continent of Africa, especially when it comes to the African Americans and all this, and then how they relate to the Bible. If you grew up in the American church, the Western church that is, and you look at the pictures on the wall for the last 100 years, it's a blonde-eyed, blue-eyed person. Well, when we look at this word, we see that that's not correct. I will repeat, that is not biblically correct based on the history of the word and based on what we know about Africa, the continent, the migration even of so-called Middle East. Let's look at something very, very interesting. And this is a take out of Genesis. I was not going to study this, but I read it by accident and I kind of love this. So check this out. This is from Got Questions. I read their website every blue moon. I tend to agree with a lot of what they say. Sometimes I may look at it and not agree, but for the most part, it's pretty decent. This is very fascinating, guys, and this goes right to Genesis when God created the world, and He was talking about the Garden of Eden. Check this out, and I'm gonna read this article, talk about it, but read it as I go. What is the significance of Cush in the Bible? Let's read. The land of Cush refers to a land south of Israel and is translated as Ethiopia in some Bible versions. Cush derives from its name from Cush, a son of Ham, son of Noah, Genesis 10 and 7. The country of Cush is mentioned throughout the Old Testament, and Cushites regularly interacted with Israelites. Let's continue. Cush is first mentioned in Genesis. The name of the second river flowing out of Eden is Gihon. Excuse me if I pronounced that wrong. It winds through the entire land of Cush, Genesis 2 and 13. Although, and this is very fascinating, guys, although some believe that in the passage, Cush could be a reference to Mesopotamia, other biblical scholars believe that it is more consistent to identify it as a general term for the African lands south of Egypt. So that's even farther down from Egypt. Egypt is a very fascinating thing when you understand the history of the Israelites in Egypt. Let's continue though. The King James Version and Contemporary English Version translate the name of the land as Egypt in Genesis 2 and 13. Cush is depicted as a powerful nation in the Bible, while Sennacherib, and I could have definitely probably mispronounced that, was laying siege to Jerusalem. He felt threatened by Taharka, king of Cush, who had been marching to meet the Assyrians in battle, which is why Sennacherib attempted to discourage the Israelites, 2 Kings 19:9 and 10. Isaiah 37:9, and later Judah's king Asa and his army marched out to fight Zerah the Cushite, who was described as having marched out against them with an army of thousands upon thousands and 300 chariots. It came as far as Marashah in 2 Chronicles 14:9. Excuse me if I butcher these names, guys, because I probably did, so excuse me for that. Asa entrusted the battle of the Lord, Yah, I call him Yah. That's another big thing that some of these word changes in the Bible, but Yah, the Most High God, which, that's that. And the strength of God, the Cushites were defeated, 2 Chronicles 14:10 and 14. Isaiah also mentions Cush, describing it as a powerful and oppressive nation. I'm not going to read the biblical scriptures. I'm just going to keep with the article. Not only did Cush possess military might, but it was also a land of wealth known for its precious stones. Job mentioned topaz of Cush as very valuable. The Lord pronounced judgment upon Cush in the prophecies of Isaiah and Ezekiel. Since the Egyptians were related to the Cushites, let me repeat that. Since the Egyptians were related to the Cushites, according to the lineage of Ham, Cush is usually mentioned alongside the judgments of Egypt. Genesis 10 and 6. In Isaiah, God denounces the Israelites who trusted in Cush and Egypt to save them from the Assyrians. God's judgment against Cush is also seen in Ezekiel's prophecies, which mention how Cush's wealth and power will be taken away. Very, very fascinating. Although several Bible comment translations substitute the English word Ethiopia for Cush, the name of Cush was not let's pause that. The name of Cush was not equivalent to modern Ethiopia, which we really could say Abyssinia or Ethiopia. Anyway, the Cush of the Bible often does seem to refer to a region in Africa. Other times it seems to refer to Arabia. I'll repeat that because I think that's a fascinating point. The Cush of the Bible often does seem to refer to a region in Africa. At other times it seems to refer to Arabia. Cush is linked to Midian, a land closer to the Red Sea. The reason for obscurity could well be that the Cushites migrated to various areas. The Cushites were dark-skinned. A couple of Cushites are mentioned in the Bible. Moses married a Cushite woman, and it was a Cushite who brought news of Absalom's death to King David. Significantly, Cush is also a nation that received the gospel and will be involved in the Millennium Kingdom. The evangelist Philip gave the gospel to the Ethiopian eunuch, who would have been referred to as a Cushite in Hebrew. And the eunuchs was one of the first converts of Ethiopia to Christianity. He undoubtedly took the gospel back to his land, where he had great influence as a royal official of Queen Candace during the millennial reign of Christ. Yeshua, they call Jesus, will receive honor from Cush and Ethiopia far beyond the rivers of Cush. My worshipers, my scattered people, will bring me offerings. Let's sum it up like this, guys. It's very well that Africa today, the what you consider poverty and all that crap type of stuff, or even I would argue that some of those places worship other gods and some witchcraft that's all that there. But could it not have been that some of the part of Africa was under judgment and they lost their power? Could it not be that when you talk about Ethiopia, they have a historic view in the biblical sense, and you say, well, what does that all matter? I think it matters because I think there's a great perspective, which is the Bible has been, I don't know if we want to say whitewash, but it's been kind of, the pictures and everything painted have been twisted upside down to the point where I think in the 1500s or 1600s in Europe, the pictures don't look like the pictures that they look like in the past 200 years. And you say, well, okay, what does that even matter? It goes back to who are the Hebrew people. I'm going to tell you why. If our Messiah, oh, glory to his name, our Messiah, if he went down into Egypt, the relative of Cush, a dark-skinned people, and he was able to blend in via the angel telling Joseph and the party to go down to save them because they were trying to kill all the boys, that means that Christ was able to blend in, right? We know where Christ came from, right? Yeshua came from, right? I think we must look at the Hebrews in a different light. And we must look at Africa, and dare I say, even Arabia is in a different light. Does that mean it's some type of color supremacy? No, it does not mean that. In fact, as we read, I scroll down where it says Moses. I don't remember reading this, but I know I should have read it. I don't say it, but okay. Moses married a Cushite woman in Numbers 12 and 1. Okay, a lot of people don't realize Moses marrying that Cushite woman, it wasn't a color thing, it was a cultural thing. So everybody that's quote unquote black are not the Israelites. But there is a great chance that the Israelites or the biblical Hebrews are a dark-skinned people based on the history of Africa and the history of the so-called Middle East. So where we find ourselves now is, guys, these Hebrews, or these Israelites, if you will, are scattered on the four corners of the earth. I believe there is a push by the Most High God to awaken his people. The awakening is not about supremacy. It's not about saying, the white man is the devil. It's not about that. It's about saying we must identify who we are so that we make sure that we're living like the Most High God wants us to live. I think the Messiah said something beautiful. He said, I came back for the lost sheep of Israel. Israel. He came back for the lost sheep. He's came back, and he's coming back even for all his people who accepted him, but he came for his people. His people are scattered. They're in the Caribbean. They're in the Americas. They are in Europe. And dare I say, they're even in Africa. They're even in Africa. I'm not making this video to denounce anybody, discourage anybody, hate anybody, or blame anybody. I'm making this video to say, guys, when you look at the Bible, when you look at the history, when you look at the nations, when you really look at it, it's telling a story. And I don't think many people are actually paying attention. Yes, some of the names have been changed. Yes, you have so many translations, which you have to keep an eye on that. But when you have an eye to see and you have a love for geography, you see who the real people are. Now, the Father came, the Messiah came for the Gentile and for the Hebrew. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we're not living in a sense of deception for those who say they are, but they are not. They say they are Hebrews or Jews, but they are not. We must be mindful of who the Father's people are. Spread it on the four corners of the earth. Many of them in poverty. Many of them may be destitute. Many of them in lands where they don't know who they are. But the awakening is now. Glory to the King Yah. Glory to our Father. He said in the book of Jeremiah, if you're going to boast, boast in that you know me, that I love kindness, justice, and mercy. If we're going to boast, let's boast in the attributes of the Creator. Let's boast in the truth. And let's be who God called us to be. Our glory and praise to the Most High. Peace.